Hello everyone, Dr. Yonit Arthur here. I'm an audiologist and strength coach. You are on the Steady Coach. And today we're going to be talking about exercise and how to use it to recover from chronic dizziness symptoms. And I know that if you are in the thick of it and feeling really awful, exercise may be the absolute last thing on your mind. So keeping that in mind, in this video, I'm going to be talking about what you can do as an absolute beginner to start moving again. And then for those of you who are a little farther along in your journey, I'm going to be giving you some detailed guidelines for how to continue to recover by leveraging exercise during your recovery process. Now, I probably don't need to tell you why you should be exercising. I think all of you are very, very familiar with all the good reasons why, the health reasons, the aesthetic reasons, the longevity reasons. We all know all this. But when you're not feeling well, in particular when you are dealing with chronic symptoms that get worse when you move or are affected by movement, which includes pretty much all of you, it can be really, really, really hard to move. That said, I think it needs to be extremely clear that it is a non-negotiable component of your recovery that we get you moving again. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the specific benefits and goals of exercise are for people who are specifically dealing with chronic dizziness symptoms. And then we're going to talk about ways that you can actually start to implement this in that goal-oriented way. The first benefit and goal of exercise for people with chronic dizziness symptoms is that exercise has a fantastic effect on your stress bucket. For those of you who are not familiar with the stress bucket metaphor, the stress bucket refers to a collection of all the life stressors that are affecting your nervous system right now and causing it to respond in a hypervigilant way. In many of my videos, I discuss the effect that the stress bucket overflow has and why it should be thought of as the root of chronic dizziness symptoms. So if you want to learn more about this, I will link to 2 videos below in the video description where you can learn more specifically about this concept. But suffice it to say that one of the big goals in our recovery process is to make sure that your stress bucket is no longer overflowing. And we talk in other videos about ways to reduce stress. But in this video, with exercise, we're talking about a way to actually make your bucket bigger. Exercise serves the function of increasing your resilience to stress. When you expose your body to stress in a very specific and measured way, you actually teach your body how to be more capable of handling stress. And this can be accomplished with pretty much any kind of exercise. So for those of you who are just starting out and really struggling, maybe even struggling to walk around your house, just getting a little bit more movement than you are right now can help increase the size of your stress bucket. For those of you who are a little farther along, this may mean starting to go for walks, and you can use this for the double purpose of exercise and practicing being less reactive to your symptoms by using something like somatic walking, which I will also link to in the video description below. And as you get farther along, perhaps even more moderate cardiovascular exercise, whether that's in the form of something you enjoy doing like walking on a treadmill or using your Peloton or other stationary bike, or perhaps even a not super intense exercise class. So again, any kind of movement, any kind of exercise helps you fulfill goal number 1. Goal number 2 is to strengthen your nervous system flexibility. And I'm so excited to talk about this today because I think that it's easy to get the impression from some of my other videos that I'm saying that stress is bad. Stress is not bad. And the fight or flight response isn't bad either. What's bad is when your body responds to stress with an extreme fight or flight response and can't come back out of it. So by exercising, you're actually practicing teaching your body to go into fight or flight and then to come back out of fight or flight into the rest and digest state. You might have heard me refer to this state as sympathetic, that's the fight or flight, and parasympathetic, that's the rest and digest. And again, pretty much any kind of exercise or movement here can start to help your body learn to up-regulate, that is, go into more of an action mode or a fight or flight type of response, and then come back down into this rest, digest, and recover state. However, certain types of exercise are more likely to push you into this extreme state and keep you elevated into this extreme sympathetic or action mode state versus other kinds of exercise. And I'm referring here to something that many people think is the gold standard for effective exercise, which is when exercise feels hard and you're breathing really hard and you're sweating and your heart rate is up for an extended period of time. This kind of exercise absolutely has a place in people's routines, but that kind of exercise does tend to lead to this increased level of activation of this fight or flight or sympathetic response, and it keeps you up there for an extended period of time. For those of you who are dealing with chronic dizziness and the resultant physical anxiety and fight or flight mode that comes with it and from it, that may be a kind of exercise that is going to be more irritating to your nervous system right now, which is why I want to correct this notion that that is the only effective type of exercise. Exercise does need to be challenging to an extent, of course, to help you adapt to stress, but prolonged high-intensity cardiovascular exercise is not necessary for most people and is certainly not my recommendation for you as you're recovering from chronic dizziness. In this area, teaching your body to upregulate and then downregulate and then upregulate and downregulate and so on, what really shines is resistance training. And resistance training is another word for training for strength or training for muscles, rather than training for cardiovascular health. And we're going to talk more about what this looks like later on in this video, but this is a unique exercise benefit specifically for those of you recovering from chronic dizziness symptoms. And it is my belief that actually including some of the exercises you're doing with the purpose of increasing nervous system flexibility is going to help you recover faster. The third special goal and benefit of exercise for people with chronic dizziness symptoms is to increase the strength of your proprioceptive system. So one of the things you probably already know if you've watched any of my videos is that the balance system is comprised of 3 different senses: your vision, your vestibular system in your ears, and your proprioceptive system, which is not just your sense of touch, but also a huge network of sensors that are in various parts of your body, including in your muscles and joints, that help your brain know how you're oriented, how quickly you're moving, what direction you're moving in, how much load is on your joints, and more. Like every other connection in your body, the more that you use this particular system, the stronger the connections get. This is why, for many of you who've gone through vestibular rehab therapy, there's often a proprioceptive or balance component to the training. But the goal here is not just balance. It's not just teaching your brain to help balance you in an unstable environment. It's also just teaching your brain to communicate with those sensors throughout your entire body, to get that information from those sensors, use it correctly, interpret it correctly, and put that information together with information from your other senses so that you know where you are in space. This is very important for everyone, but especially people recovering from chronic dizziness symptoms. And this is, again, an area where strength training versus cardiovascular training really shines. And we'll talk about some ways to harness strength training for this purpose later on in this video. Another interesting note here in favor of strength training is that research shows that there is a strong connection between someone's strength and someone's ability to avoid falls. So this is applicable to you right now, whether or not you actually have balance problems, and it's applicable to you for the rest of your life. And number 4, the fourth goal and benefit of exercise for people recovering from chronic dizziness is that exercise tremendously increases people's sense of agency, their sense of control, their sense of confidence, their sense that they can actually make a difference in what's happening to them. And if you don't think that's important, think back on when you were first dealing with your symptoms, what it was like when you went to your doctor and your doctor said, "I don't know how to help you." How did your symptoms respond and how did you feel? And then how did you feel when you found my channel or any other resource saying, hey, there actually is something you can do about this, and didn't put you in a passive role, put you in a role in which you said, aha, I can use some of my skills, some of my own internal strength to get better. Exercise can tremendously contribute to this sense of agency that you've started to build. And I view agency as one of the key elements, along with movement and along with connection, in helping people get better from chronic dizziness symptoms. Again, we're dealing with symptoms here that are directly affected by stress levels. Your stress levels go down when you feel like there's something you can do about it. And this is something else that there's actually quite a bit of research on. People who develop post-traumatic stress symptoms tend to be more likely to develop them if they felt like they have no control over what happened to them or what happens to them. The more agency, the more control someone feels over his or her fate, the less stress someone has, and the more likely someone is to overcome symptoms. So all this to say, what you've probably noticed is that out of the 4 things I mentioned, resistance training specifically played into 3 of them. So if you're brand new to this idea that you should be exercising to get out of chronic dizziness, I want you not to worry about the last 3 and just focus on moving again and getting that stress bucket to build some more resilience, using that movement as an opportunity to change your reactions to the symptoms. So for those of you who are new, again, it may involve just doing things around the house, it may involve going for slow walks, or it may involve a little bit of a more intense cardiovascular exercise of your choosing that you enjoy. But for those of you who are ready to take it to the next level or want to incorporate some of my recommendations into your routine, let's talk about resistance training and how to use it for recovery from chronic dizziness symptoms. I know a lot of this may feel overwhelming, by the way, if you've never strength trained before. So if you have the ability to hire a trainer or coach, I highly recommend that. If that's not in the cards for you right now, there are online services that you can use to hire a trainer remotely, or there are AI-powered apps that are relatively inexpensive or even free that will build a resistance training program for you based on your time limitations and the equipment you have available. And if you incorporate the simple principles I'm about to talk about into your routine, you're going to be just fine. The first one is remember what you're training for, and you're training for strength and muscle. You are not necessarily training at this point for endurance. That means that you should be resting fully between sets. This has that benefit that we talked about earlier of helping your nervous system learn to upregulate and then downregulate. This has the benefit of helping your brain connect to your proprioceptive system. This has the benefit of helping you see progress and feel agency in your ability to recover, because over time you're going to see yourself get stronger. So it really hits all of the goals that we talked about earlier in this video. And when I say rest fully between sets, what I'm referring to here is that I don't want you out of breath and bent over gasping before you start your next set. For beginners who are lifting relatively light weights or using lots of body weight exercises, the rest may only be about a minute. But for people who are more advanced, it may be 90 seconds, 3 minutes, or even 5 minutes between exercises. Don't feel that your need to take rest is reflecting anything wrong with you or any weakness on your part. On the contrary, the more elite someone is, the more rest they often need to take. So this isn't you accommodating your dizziness right now, this is you actually training for strength. And in order to do that, your body, your muscles need to recover between sets. The second is that you should be moving in all planes of motion. Keeping in mind our goals at the beginning of this video, one of which is to increase your brain's connection to your proprioceptive system, it's important for your brain to know how to move in directions other than forward and backwards. You should be able to move to the side, you should be able to move in a rotational direction. So building in some exercises that move side to side or in a rotational direction is really important. And I recommend including at least one of these exercises in each workout that you do. The third set of guidelines is in regards to the nitty-gritty details, and I recommend 8 to 12 repetitions of each exercise, 2 to 3 sets of each exercise, a total exercise time of 20 to 30 minutes to start off, maybe 2, maybe 3 times a week for those of you who are beginners. And finally, we want to use the principle of what is called progressive overload. And that basically is a fancy word for continuing to make things harder as you go. So it's perfectly fine, especially if you're early in your recovery, if you just start with the bare minimum and focus on getting through your workouts to start. But as you get more confident, as you gain more strength, you want to think about ways to increase the difficulty of the exercises, either by adding weight to them or making the exercises more difficult. And I could probably do a 3-hour-long video specifically on this topic, so I'm not going to go too much into depth with this. The most important thing to know is that when it's no longer challenging, it's time to make things a little bit harder. And a good rule of thumb is to always have 1 or 2 reps still in your tank. Over time, your body is going to get better at calibrating how many reps you might have left in you, but don't feel like you have to go to failure each time. Over time, your body's gonna get better at knowing what weight leads to failure. And at that point, it'll be much easier for you to figure out how you're going to progress your exercise. And this is also where a trainer can be really, really helpful, because there are so many ways to modify exercises to make them harder or easier depending on where you're at. But I can't emphasize this enough. Progressive overload is important for every single goal that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. It's important for increasing the size of your stress bucket. It's important for continuing to challenge your brain to connect to your proprioceptive system. It's important for increasing strength. It's important for increasing your sense of confidence and agency. And it's important to keep challenging yourself so that you are getting yourself into this sympathetic state, this fight or flight or action mode state, and then coming back out of it. So that was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to exercise, but I hope it gave you some sense of direction here as you start to incorporate movement into your recovery routine. Again, movement is one of the foundational components of getting better from chronic dizziness. You have to move in order to get better, and moving in this way, I believe, is going to be much more productive and much more helpful for your recovery than, for example, doing 30 minutes of VRT exercises. I hope this was helpful. I know you probably have lots of questions. I will do my best to answer them, and if we need to, we will do some follow-up videos on this one. I will include some more resources in the video description below, including a beginner's guide to strength training. Please leave questions or comments below, and if you found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.